They say monsters are born. But what if I told you that sometimes monsters are made? Quietly, behind polite smiles and kind gestures, Elena Hayes was the kind of woman everyone overlooked until the night her kindness cracked and something far darker slipped through. Elena had always been the kind of person who gave more than she received. The one who held the elevator for strangers, stayed late at work to cover for others, and apologized when someone bumped into her. At 32, she lived in a quiet apartment on the edge of town, her life neat but unremarkable. To the outside world, she was invisible. But behind her soft eyes and hesitant smile, something fragile was waiting to break. It began on a rainy Tuesday, the kind where the sky felt too heavy and the streets glistened like broken glass. Elena sat at her desk in a dimly lit office, staring at her computer screen while her supervisor barked orders without even making eye contact. "Elena, redo the report." "It's sloppy," he said sharply, not noticing the hours she had spent shaping every word. She swallowed her frustration like she always did, pressing her lips together until they hurt. No one saw the quiet storm building in her chest. At home that evening, Elena made herself tea and listened to the tick of the clock. Silence had become her companion, but lately it sounded more like an accusation than comfort. She thought about her life, the kindness she gave so freely, the patience she carried like a burden, and how little it had given back. Her reflection in the window looked tired, almost unfamiliar, as if she was staring at a stranger who'd been hiding in plain sight. For years, Elena had believed that goodness would be rewarded, that patience and empathy would eventually circle back to her. But now she wondered, what if the world didn't care about kindness? What if kindness was nothing more than a leash that kept her powerless? Her phone buzzed. A message from her estranged sister, Leah. "Haven't heard from you in months. Don't disappear again." Elena's chest tightened. Leah's words looked caring, but Elena knew the truth. Leah had always been the golden one, the sister who got the attention, the love, the forgiveness. Elena had always been the shadow. She typed back, "I'm fine. Just busy," then deleted it before sending. Why bother? That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her mind spun in circles, replaying every small betrayal she had buried. The coworker who stole her idea. The friend who vanished when she needed help. The man who swore he loved her, then disappeared without explanation. They had all taken pieces of her, and she had let them. Something inside her whispered, "Stop waiting for the world to be fair." The following morning, Elena stood in front of the mirror, tracing her fingers over the faint lines around her eyes. For the first time, she didn't see weakness. She saw possibility. A thought unsettled her. Maybe kindness had been her cage all along. At work, when her supervisor criticized her again, Elena didn't shrink. She stared at him, unblinking, long enough that he faltered mid-sentence. "Fix it," he muttered, glancing away. Elena felt a rush, small but electric. It was power, and it tasted better than she had ever imagined. Walking home, she noticed the world differently. the man shoving past her on the sidewalk, the woman cutting in line at the cafe. She had endured these slights countless times, telling herself they didn't matter. But now she wondered, why should she always be the one to bend? Why shouldn't someone else break for once? That evening, Elena wandered into a bookstore. She wasn't looking for anything, but a title caught her eye, The Anatomy of Power. She flipped through its pages, words like control, dominance, and submission flashing at her like signals. Without hesitation, she bought it. Later, curled on her couch, she devoured the book. It wasn't about cruelty, not directly. It was about how people shaped the world through authority, fear, and influence. The more she read, the more a dangerous idea took root. Maybe the only way to survive was to stop being good. For the first time in years, Elena felt awake. When she closed the book, her tea sat cold on the table. She looked out the window, the city lights glowing like 1,000 indifferent eyes. A quiet vow formed in her chest, one no one could hear. If kindness made her invisible, then she would learn what it meant to be seen. And somewhere deep inside, the first ember of something dangerous began to burn. Elena Hayes woke the next morning with a strange clarity, as though she had shed a skin she never knew she was wearing. The city outside her window looked the same, the streets buzzing with buses and hurried commuters, but her eyes lingered on things differently now. Every face she passed carried secrets. Every laugh, every hurried step, none of it felt innocent anymore. She saw small aggressions layered beneath ordinary lives, the selfishness that people masked behind polite smiles. On the bus, a man's briefcase brushed her arm, and when she moved back, he didn't bother to apologize. For years, Elena would have looked away, swallowed the sting, and convinced herself it didn't matter. But today she locked her gaze on him until he glanced up, startled by the intensity in her eyes. He shifted uncomfortably and turned away. A thrill shot through her veins. It was nothing more than a look, but it had power. And she wanted more. At work, Elena approached her desk with a calm confidence she hadn't felt before. The office smelled faintly of coffee and stale air, the sound of keyboards clattering like rain. Her supervisor, Mr. Calloway, appeared in her peripheral vision. "Elena, the numbers in the quarterly draft don't add up," he muttered, dropping a file onto her desk. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. Instead, she pushed the folder back toward him, her voice steady. "No, they do. Maybe you should double-check your notes." The word startled even her, but she didn't let it show. Calloway blinked, caught off guard by her firmness. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, muttering something under his breath as he walked away. Elena felt her pulse drum with satisfaction. For the first time, she had not been invisible. By noon, she slipped out for lunch alone. The sky was pale, the sun trying to break through a blanket of gray. She carried her food to a nearby park, where pigeons scattered at her footsteps. Sitting on a bench, she watched people rush past, their phones glued to their ears, their eyes never meeting. They were all so wrapped up in themselves. And for the first time, She didn't pity them. She judged them. The thought unsettled her, but she didn't turn away from it. Something in the anatomy of power had shifted her lens. She remembered a passage. Control is not taken, it is surrendered. Those who hesitate to assert themselves give permission for others to rule them. She whispered the line to herself, letting it settle on her tongue like a prayer. That evening, her sister Leah called. Elena almost ignored it, but something told her to answer. Leah's voice came through, warm and polished as always. "Hey, stranger. I was starting to think you'd disappeared." Elena forced a smile, though Leah couldn't see it. "I've been busy." "With what? Same old work? Elena, you've got to start living. You're wasting your time in that dead-end office. Don't you want more?" The words pricked her like thorns. For years, Leah had played this role, the successful sister with the perfect job, perfect family, perfect everything. She meant it as encouragement, maybe, but it sounded like judgment. Elena's voice cooled. "Maybe I want different things than you." A silence stretched. Leah sighed. "I'm just saying you deserve better. Don't shut me out again, okay?" When the call ended, Elena stared at her reflection in the black screen of her phone. Leah's tone lingered, but instead of guilt, Elena felt something else, resentment, sharp and simmering. Leah wasn't worried. She was superior. And Elena was tired of being the shadow. That night, Elena returned to the book, underlining sentences with a pen. She began to keep notes in a small journal, not about kindness, but about leverage, observation, and influence. She wrote down every slight she could remember, the boss, the friend, the ex-lover. She labeled them as case studies, experiments in waiting. Sleep came late, and when it did, it was restless. She dreamed of standing in a room full of people who turned their backs to her. No matter how loudly she screamed, they ignored her, until she reached out, grabbed one by the shoulder, and forced him to face her. His eyes widened, terrified, but finally he saw her. She woke with her heart pounding, sweat clinging to her skin. And she knew, deep in her chest, that she didn't want to be unseen ever again. The following day, her experiments began. It was small at first. She deliberately dropped a pen in a meeting, forcing Calloway to pause mid-sentence as she bent down, commanding the room's attention with silence. When a coworker tried to interrupt her during a discussion, Elena kept talking, her voice unshaken until the other woman fell quiet. Each time, she felt the rush grow stronger, the thrill of pressing into space she had once surrendered. But there was one moment that stayed with her most. At the cafe near her office, a man rudely cut in line ahead of her. Normally, Elena would have stepped back, resigned. This time, she tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me," she said, her voice low but steady. "You saw me here first." The man blinked, surprised, then muttered an apology and moved behind her. Elena turned forward, her pulse racing. The power was intoxicating, sharper than coffee, deeper than any comfort she'd ever felt. That night, writing in her journal, she realized she wasn't just changing. She was awakening. and it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. She closed her eyes, whispering to the dark room, "No more shadows." But she didn't realize that every step she took now wasn't just away from kindness. It was toward something else entirely. Something waiting for her in the places she had never dared to look. And once she crossed that threshold, there would be no turning back. Elena Hayes felt lighter than she had in years. Each small act of defiance, each moment she refused to shrink, left her more alive. But as the days turned into weeks, she noticed something unsettling. It was getting easier to cross lines she once swore she never would. It began subtly. She lied to Calloway during a meeting, presenting an idea she had overheard from another department as her own. When he praised her, she smiled and thanked him, feeling no trace of guilt. Later, when the colleague confronted her, Elena tilted her head and said calmly, "Maybe you're imagining things." The other woman faltered, doubt clouding her eyes. Elena walked away victorious, her pulse humming with quiet delight. The mask she had worn her whole life, the obedient, invisible one, was slipping. And underneath it was someone sharper, colder, someone who had no intention of being ignored ever again. At home, Elena's journal was filling fast. She didn't just write memories anymore, she wrote observations. A man at the cafe who looked desperate for validation. A co-worker who flinched at confrontation. Even her landlord, whose nervous chatter suggested he'd give in easily if pressed. They weren't people to her in those pages. They were patterns, weaknesses, open doors. One evening, Leah invited her to dinner. Elena hesitated but agreed. It had been months since they'd sat together, and she wanted to test something, to see if the power she'd begun tasting could extend to the sister who had always cast her in shadow. The restaurant was cozy, dim lights flickering against red brick walls. Leah arrived late, as usual, breezing in with her effortless charm. "Elena," she exclaimed, hugging her tightly. "God, you look good. Finally taking care of yourself." It was meant as a compliment, but Elena caught the edge beneath it. She forced a smile. "I suppose so." Leah ordered wine, chatted about her promotion, her husband's new project, her children's achievements. Elena listened, but her mind was elsewhere, studying every word, every gesture. She noticed the way Leah's smile faltered when she mentioned her marriage, the tiny hesitation before she said her husband's name. A weakness. A crack. For the first time, Elena didn't feel small next to her sister. She felt superior. When Leah finally asked, "So, how's work?" Elena leaned forward, voice smooth. "Better than ever. In fact, my boss is relying on me more and more. I might be in line for something bigger soon." It wasn't true, but the way Leah's brows lifted, surprised, maybe even envious, sent a wave of satisfaction through her. By the end of dinner, Leah was laughing, telling stories, drinking more than she should. Elena drove her home, and when Leah thanked her, Elena smiled with a calmness that masked the truth. She had learned something tonight. Her sister wasn't untouchable. That realization lingered long after she returned to her apartment. Elena poured herself a glass of water, staring out the window. The city seemed smaller now, like it could be bent to her will if she only pushed hard enough. But with that thought came another, darker, heavier. What if kindness hadn't just been her cage? What if it had been her disguise? The next morning, Elena arrived at work early. She placed her things on her desk, then quietly switched the seating chart in the conference room, ensuring that a rival coworker would be seated far from Calloway, where their voices would be less likely to carry. During the meeting, when that coworker tried to raise an idea, Elena spoke over her smoothly, redirecting the conversation until the moment passed. Calloway didn't even notice. It was effortless, too effortless. Walking home, Elena felt the air cold against her cheeks. Her footsteps echoed sharply on the pavement. For years, she had thought the world was against her. But now she understood. The world was waiting for her to claim her place. And all it took was the courage to stop playing by its rules. That night, she dreamed again. She stood in the same crowded room, voices buzzing around her, backs turned. But this time, when she shouted, people turned. Their eyes were wide, terrified, but fixed on her. She felt taller, stronger. She woke breathless, clutching her sheets with a smile she didn't recognize. In the dim glow of her bedside lamp, Elena opened her journal. She wrote a single line across the page. Fear is a faster language than kindness. The words pulsed inside her like truth. But as she set down the pen, she caught her reflection in the window, the faint smile still lingering, her eyes sharper than she remembered. And for the first time, a flicker of unease touched her, because she realized she wasn't pretending anymore. The mask hadn't just slipped, it was gone. And Elena wasn't sure she wanted it back. Elena Hayes had once thought power belonged only to the bold, the loud, the ones born to dominate. But now she understood something different. Power could grow in silence. It could take root in shadows, nurtured by patience until it was ready to bloom. And she was blooming. Her journal had become more than notes. It was a map. Each page detailed behaviors, fears, and triggers she noticed in the people around her. She wasn't simply writing anymore. She was strategizing. At work, her experiments sharpened. She discovered that Calloway, her supervisor, was more insecure than arrogant. He barked orders to cover his own mistakes, and if someone subtly pointed them out, his face flushed red with panic. Elena began planting seeds, a forgotten document here, a misfiled report there. Nothing that could be traced back to her, but enough to leave him looking careless in front of upper management. When he snapped at her one afternoon, accusing her of missing a deadline, she calmly slid the email thread across his desk. "You asked for this on Friday, not Wednesday," she said softly. His face fell. He stammered, and for the first time he apologized to her. It was small, but to Elena it was monumental. Her coworkers noticed the shift. Some whispered about her newfound confidence. Others avoided eye contact altogether. The same woman who once blended into the wallpaper now carried a weight in her presence that unsettled people, and Elena loved it. But the seeds of control weren't limited to the office. At home, she tested her influence in subtler ways. Her landlord had mentioned repairs that were too expensive to handle. Elena tilted her head, her voice steady but kind. If the board found out, I doubt they'd be happy. But I'm sure you'll take care of it. He nodded nervously, promising to send someone that week. She smiled, locking the door behind him with a thrill running through her. Even Leah wasn't safe. Her sister called often now, eager to reconnect, unaware that Elena was taking notes during every conversation. When Leah complained about her husband's late nights, Elena hummed in sympathy, then asked softly, "Are you sure it's just work?" She heard the hesitation on the other end, the fear creeping in. She didn't push, not yet. Seeds needed time to grow. One Friday night, Elena attended a small office gathering at a downtown bar. Normally, she would have stayed quiet in a corner, sipping her drink until she could politely leave. But not tonight. Tonight, she watched. She noticed how her colleagues leaned towards certain voices, how they laughed too loudly at Calloway's jokes, how one man glanced nervously at his phone every few minutes as if afraid of missing something. When the moment was right, she leaned into a conversation about a new project. She spoke confidently, weaving half-truths and suggestions until the group's attention pivoted toward her. Calloway tried to interrupt, but Elena placed a hand lightly on his arm and kept talking. He froze, silenced by the gesture, and the others didn't even notice. For the first time, she wasn't just present in the room, she owned it. Walking home later, the city lights felt different, as if they were bending toward her instead of glaring down indifferently. She thought about the line she had written in her journal, "Fear is a faster language than kindness." She had tested it, and it was true. People responded to strength, not softness, to certainty, not apology. But in the quiet of her apartment, Elena felt a flicker of something else, an unease she couldn't name. Her reflection in the window looked sharper, her smile colder. She whispered, "I'm still me," but the words rang hollow. The next day, as she flipped through her journal, she paused on Leah's name. She remembered the hesitation in her sister's voice, the way it cracked when she mentioned her husband. Elena tapped the pen against the page. There was opportunity there, not just to be seen, but to control. Her phone buzzed. It was Leah. Against her better judgment, Elena answered, "Hey, want to grab coffee tomorrow?" Leah asked, her tone cheerful but tight. Elena hesitated. She could hear it, the doubt, the vulnerability. "Of course," she said, her voice smooth. "I'll meet you at noon." When the call ended, Elena leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. A dangerous thought curled inside her. Perhaps this wasn't just about reclaiming her voice. Perhaps it was about testing how far she could bend others before they broke. And somewhere deep down, she realized she wasn't afraid of the answer. The seeds had been planted, and tomorrow she would see how they grew. Elena Hayes sat across from Leah at the cafe, her coffee untouched. Steam curled upward, blurring the space between them. Leah's hands trembled slightly as she stirred sugar into her cup, the clinking spoon giving away her nerves. Elena didn't need to ask why. She could see it in the tightness around her sister's mouth, the dark circles under her eyes. "You're not sleeping," Elena said softly. Leah's eyes flicked up, startled. "It's nothing, just work." "And David's been stressed." Elena tilted her head, studying her. It wasn't just stress. Leah's voice cracked on her husband's name, and she looked away too quickly. Elena felt that dark thrill again, the pulse of knowing something before it was said. "You don't have to lie to me," Elena murmured. Leah's spoon slipped, clattering against the saucer. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a shaky breath, she whispered, "Sometimes he yells, throws things." "It's not all the time, but," Elena leaned in, "but enough." Leah's lip trembled, and she nodded. Elena should have felt sympathy. She should have reached across the table, offered comfort, promised her sister that things would get better. That's what she would have done months ago. But the woman who sat here now was different. She didn't see pain as something to soothe. She saw it as leverage. "You deserve better," Elena said, her voice steady. "You know that, right?" Leah gave a weak smile, but her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to do." Elena reached out and covered her sister's hand, her expression calm, almost serene. "Then let me help you." The words weren't a promise, they were a test. And Leah, vulnerable and desperate, nodded without hesitation. That night, Elena wrote Leah's name in her journal again, circling it twice. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about power that spread, growing roots through every part of her life. She could shape outcomes, bend people to her will, make them depend on her. Days later, Leah called, sobbing after another fight with David. Elena listened, murmured reassurances, but inside she was mapping her strategy. She told Leah to come stay with her for a while. "You'll be safe here," she said. When Leah arrived with a small suitcase, Elena greeted her with warmth. But as soon as her sister stepped inside, Elena felt it, the shift. Leah was in her space now, her territory. The first night, Leah cried herself to sleep on the couch. Elena stood in the hallway, listening, her face unreadable. Once, she might have crawled beside her sister, held her, whispered comfort. But instead, she whispered only to herself. This is how it begins. At work, Elena's control tightened further. Calloway grew more paranoid, stumbling over his mistakes, avoiding her eyes. Co-workers began coming to her directly with questions, bypassing him. The power dynamic had flipped, and no one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. And yet, with every victory, Elena felt a growing hunger, a need not just to control, but to push, to see how far people could bend before they snapped. The breaking point came late one Friday evening. Leah was in the kitchen, making tea, when her phone buzzed. David. She froze, staring at the screen. Elena, watching from the doorway, spoke softly. "Answer it." Leah shook her head. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Elena's tone was firm, commanding. "Pick it up. With trembling fingers, Leah obeyed. David's voice barked through the speaker, demanding to know where she was, why she hadn't come home. Leah stammered, but Elena stepped closer, her presence looming. "Tell him you're not coming back," Elena whispered. Leah's eyes widened in panic. I. Say it," Elena pressed. Her voice was low, cold, hypnotic. Leah swallowed hard, then forced the words out. "I'm not coming back." On the other end, David exploded, his voice a storm of curses and threats. Leah's hand shook, but Elena's didn't. She reached over, took the phone, and with a calm smile, ended the call. Leah collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Elena placed the phone on the table, her voice steady. "There, it's done." But in that moment, as Leah crumbled and clung to her, Elena felt no pity, no guilt, only satisfaction. Because she hadn't just supported her sister, she had commanded her, directed her, controlled her. That night, Elena stood by the window, city lights glittering like sparks on water. Her reflection stared back, harder now, sharper, with eyes that glowed in the dim glass. She realized something chilling. She wasn't guiding Leah to safety. She was bending her into something new, shaping her fear into obedience. And for the first time, Elena wondered if this was who she was meant to be all along. Elena Hayes woke before dawn, her body humming with an energy that felt almost electric. She slipped quietly into the kitchen, careful not to wake Leah, who had fallen asleep on the couch again. Elena poured herself coffee and stood by the window, staring at the sleeping city. Something inside her was changing, growing. She didn't feel like the woman she had been months ago, timid and overlooked. That Elena had craved approval. This Elena craved control, and now she had it. Leah depended on her completely. Her co-workers deferred to her, and Calloway, once so smug, was unraveling faster than she could have predicted. By noon, it became clear. Calloway had been called into a closed-door meeting with the regional director. Rumors spread like wildfire. Fraud. Misreporting. Elena didn't even have to lift a finger. His downfall was happening all on its own. As co-workers whispered nervously in the break room, Elena kept her composure, offering small, knowing smiles. She wasn't just watching the pieces fall. She was arranging them silently, invisibly. And the feeling was intoxicating. But at home, things were messier. Leah clung to her, fragile and lost. She jumped at every knock on the door, panicked when her phone buzzed, and begged Elena not to leave her alone. "You're safe here," Elena reassured, her voice always calm, always steady. Yet inside, she was weary. Leah's dependence was heavy. It was no longer just support, it was suffocation. One evening, Leah stood in the kitchen doorway, her eyes rimmed red from crying. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Elena turned slowly, setting down her glass. "What do you mean?" Leah hesitated. "Keeping me here. Lying to David. Cutting everyone off. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing." Elena stepped closer, her presence filling the room. You're not disappearing. You're being remade, stronger, safer, and no one, not David, not anyone, will ever hurt you again." Leah nodded quickly, too quickly, but her eyes betrayed her. Doubt lingered there, trembling like a candle flame in the dark. Elena saw it and, for the first time, felt something sharp pierce her calm, anger. The next day, Elena began locking the door from the inside when she left for work. She told herself it was for Leah's safety. But part of her knew the truth. It was about control. She couldn't risk Leah running back to her old life. Not now. That night, she returned home to find Leah pacing, frantic. "Why did you lock me in?" "Elena, that's not okay." Elena's expression stayed smooth, but her voice carried an edge. "I told you, it's for your safety." Leah shook her head, voice rising. "No, it's for you. You're not protecting me. You're controlling me." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy as stone. Elena's calm cracked just slightly, enough for something colder to slip through. "If I were controlling you," she said softly, "you wouldn't be questioning me right now." Leah's face paled. She sank into a chair, silent, trembling. Elena turned away, her own hands shaking, not with guilt, but with exhilaration. She had never spoken that way to her sister before. And the truth was, she liked it. Meanwhile, Calloway's unraveling reached its peak. He was escorted from the office 2 days later, his desk cleared, his reputation shattered. Elena watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction, but she didn't celebrate. Instead, she felt restless, uneasy, because she realized something dangerous. Calloway wasn't the real enemy. He was just a practice round. The true challenge was closer. That weekend, Leah disappeared into the bathroom for nearly an hour. When she came out, her face was pale, her eyes wet. Elena noticed the crumpled note in her hand before Leah shoved it into her pocket. "What is that?" Elena asked. "Nothing," Leah whispered. Elena's stomach coiled. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Show me." Leah froze, then slowly unfolded the note. It was a letter, addressed to David. Apologies, promises, desperation inked in every word. Elena's jaw clenched as she read. She handed the paper back with a calm smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're still thinking of him." Leah's lip quivered. "He's my husband." Something inside Elena snapped. "He's your prison." Her voice was low, dangerous. "And if you go back to him, he'll destroy you. Do you want that?" Leah's tears fell faster. "I don't know what I want anymore." Elena stepped so close their foreheads nearly touched. Her whisper was a knife. "Then let me decide for you." That night, while Leah slept, Elena stood in the dark, staring at her sister's sleeping form. The streetlight outside cast long shadows across the room. And for the first time, Elena felt the weight of what she was becoming. Not a protector. Not even a savior. Something darker. Because she no longer wanted to save Leah from David. She wanted to save Leah from herself. even if it meant breaking her completely. Elena Hayes no longer recognized the woman staring back at her in the mirror. Her eyes looked sharper, darker, as if lit from within by something she couldn't name. It had been weeks since Calloway's fall, weeks since Leah's letter to David, yet the unease had not left her chest. Instead, it grew louder, demanding. Leah tried harder to appease her now, smiling when she was expected to smile, staying quiet when Elena pressed her too hard. But her silence wasn't obedience, it was distance. And Elena felt it widening like a crack in the walls of her carefully built world. One rainy night, Leah stood by the window, staring into the downpour. "I had a dream," she whispered. "I dreamed I was free, and I woke up and realized I'm not." Elena's jaw tightened. "You are free. I saved you." Leah turned to her, eyes wet, voice trembling but steady. "No, Elena, you replaced one prison with another." The words struck Elena harder than she expected. For a moment, her chest burned with shame. But the shame quickly twisted into anger. "You don't understand what I've done for you," she hissed. "Everything. Everything I destroyed for you." Leah stepped back, shaking her head. "Then maybe you weren't saving me at all. Maybe you were saving yourself." Elena froze. The truth in those words hit her like glass shattering. She wanted to deny it, but deep inside, she knew. She wasn't saving Leah anymore. She was building a world where she could never be abandoned again. The next day, Leah disappeared. The apartment door was ajar when Elena came home, the lock broken. A single suitcase was gone. On the kitchen table, a folded note sat waiting. Elena's hands trembled as she opened it. "I love you, but I can't stay. I need to remember who I am before I lose myself completely. Don't come after me." Her vision blurred. The room tilted. For the first time, Elena felt powerless. She tore the note apart with shaking hands, her breath coming ragged. "Don't come after me," she repeated under her breath, as if mocking the words would make them less real. But she knew. Leah was gone. That night, Elena walked the city streets under the drizzle, her coat pulled tight. Neon lights reflected off puddles, each step echoing louder in her ears. Everywhere she turned, she saw reminders of Leah, a girl laughing under an umbrella, a sister tugging another's hand across the street. Each glimpse stabbed at her chest, sharp and relentless. She stopped at a crosswalk, staring at her reflection in the rain-slicked glass of a store window. She looked like any other woman, ordinary, harmless, but she knew better. Monsters didn't always look like monsters. Sometimes they looked like sisters, caretakers, saviors. Elena whispered to her reflection, her voice breaking, "What have I become?" And then, quietly, almost too quiet for herself to hear, "And why does it feel so good?" The question scared her more than Leah's absence, because deep down she knew the hunger inside her wouldn't stop with Leah. It had already grown past her. Calloway was gone. Leah was gone. And still, the darkness inside her wanted more. The rain thickened, washing the city in silver streaks. Elena tilted her head back, letting the cold drops hit her face, her lips parting in something between a laugh and a sob. She was free now, free of obligation, free of resistance. But freedom had a taste she wasn't ready for, bitter, addictive, dangerous. The next morning, Elena didn't go to work. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from her. She thought of Leah, her fragile smile, her trembling voice. She thought of all the times she had told herself it was for love, for protection. But if it was love, why did it feel like victory? She closed her eyes and let the silence answer. It wasn't love. It had never been love. It was power. The purest kind she had ever known. And now that she had tasted it, there was no going back. When the knock came at her door, she startled. Slow, deliberate. She opened it to find a man in a gray suit, holding a file under his arm. "Elena Hayes?" he asked. She nodded. "I'd like to ask you some questions about your former colleague, Mr. Calloway." Her heart lurched, then steadied. She smiled, calm and poised. "Of course. Come in." As the man stepped inside, Elena felt it, that same electric hum in her chest. The story wasn't over. Leah may have escaped, but Elena's descent had only just begun. Because monsters aren't born, and they aren't made once. They're made again and again, with every choice, every silence, every crack where kindness breaks, and Elena Hayes was just getting started. If this story gave you chills, don't stop here. Subscribe for more dark tales, share this with a friend who loves suspense, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement keeps these stories alive.